You are now experiencing the digital life with Kevin Lockett.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Digital Life. On today's show, I talked to Maurice Cherry from the Revision Path podcast when he discussed diversity in technology. Now, with his podcast, Maurice is doing a wonderful thing because he's giving a spotlight to African-American web designers and creators in technology who otherwise doesn't get enough publicity, or if any, at all. I personally feel Maurice is doing great work with Revision Path, and I hope by the end of our interview, you will feel the same way. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Maurice Cherry from RevisionPath.com. Okay, we're talking to Maurice Cherry. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm fine. You know, I always like to start my show off with different take on things. So I was doing some research on you, and you might have the best backstory of any tech guy I've ever researched. You were talking about your mom, and you said your mom wanted you to go to college and major in something that would make a lot of money like Dwayne Wayne on The Different World. That to me is like the best backstory ever of how Dwayne Wayne actually influenced your mama. Said, I want you to be like this guy on TV, which was very cool at the time. So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I initially wanted to be an English major, and I wrote a lot all through middle school and high school, but she really thought that English wasn't like a money major, like it wasn't going to make any money, so she wanted me to go into computer engineering or something like that, like Dwayne Wayne, because I had an interest in computers in high school, so she thought it would just kind of be a logical progression.
So let's talk about you a little bit. First, let's talk about your company 318. Where did that number come from?
Well, 318 is for March 18th, which is my birthday. That's sort of that's where that came from. So there's not really any other numerological significance outside of that. I thought it sounded cool because there are media companies that usually are made up of three numbers like that. And 318, of course, had the significance for me. I just wanted to change it so it wasn't the numbers 318. I wanted it to look and stand out a little bit more, which is why it's the number 3 and the word 18 like that. So it's 318 Media. So
you were in a position where you worked for companies before you started your own company, and some people would have just stayed in the corporate world. But what made you decide that you wanted to start your company in 2008?
Well, I always wanted to start my own company. It was just sort of the that fear and that trepidation of trying to figure out when is the best time to do it. And of course, now in hindsight, I realize that there is no best time to do it. You just have to sort of step out on faith and make it happen. But yeah, other companies I've worked for the state of Georgia. I've worked for AT&T, for WebMD, for AutoTrader. I've worked for startups. I've done internships at NASA. So I've worked in a lot of different types of environments and things like that. And entrepreneurship was just something that I had always kind of been doing work on the side anyway, whether it was web design or freelance writing or something like that. And in 2008, through a bunch of different circumstances, I was able to step out and start my business. And here I am almost 6 years later.
All right. What's the best lesson you've learned about being an entrepreneur?
Definitely the biggest lesson that I've learned is if you're not a money person, I won't say a money person. If you're not someone that really sort of keeps up with the taxes and the accounting and a lot of the financial parts of business, hire someone to do that as soon as you can possibly afford it. I cannot stress that enough. Because as you start making money, really start making money and you have clients and things like this, you realize that you're being pulled in a lot of different directions in terms of the work that you have to do. You have to talk with clients, you have to code, you have to design, you have to do all these different things. And then when it comes down to your business, your marketing, you're sending out invoices and things like that, the sooner that you can get an accountant or a payroll person or someone that can handle that for you so you can focus on the work that you do and focus on your clients, the better.
Yeah. I mean, did you handle everything by yourself, like right in the very beginning, or did you have help? Did you have some help along the way?
No, everything that I've done has been mostly sort of by myself, kind of a trial and error type of thing. Within the first year of business, I actually started a second business with two other people here in Atlanta, and that business only lasted for about a year before we decided to sort of dissolve it and go our separate ways. But during that year, I really sort of learned a lot about myself with business and how I need to handle my business and handle things. So it was a good learning experience.
Which leads us to Black Weblog Awards. I know you don't own it anymore. You sold it off. But I
sold it in 2011.
Yeah, what made you decide to do it? Because I guess it was growing pretty fast. But what made you decide to sell it?
Well, there were a number of factors that contributed to selling it. The first was that I was, rapidly approaching my 30th birthday, and I had been doing the Black Weblog Awards since I was 24.
Right.
And so because it was a summer event, every summer that I had, basically through my 20s, I was working on the Black Weblog Awards, which it was growing in scope every year, which meant that it was growing in terms of technology. It was growing in terms of money that I had to spend on the actual event and things like that. And while I feel that it was good and that it had a good, sort of payoff in terms of the blogging atmosphere or the blogosphere, as some would say, personally, I felt like I was nearing the end of my rope, so to speak. The Black Weblog Awards was not something that I was getting paid for. I was getting a lot of, hate mail and negative messages behind it. It was very hard to get sponsorship. And every year it just became bigger and bigger. And for one person trying to do it, it became harder to kind of put it on smoothly every year because I'm doing everything from the marketing to the graphics to the coding to, all this sorts of stuff. In 2010, there were people that I had sort of tried to strike a deal with to do a live event. That ended up falling through because they sort of backed out of the deal and didn't really tell me about it. So by the time 2011 really came around, I was sort of done with the Black Weblog Awards. I still think it's a great idea, and I'm very fortunate that it's still able to go on now that it's entering its 10th year. But at the time that I was doing it, right around then with 2011, I felt like the community support was not there, the financial support was not there, the emotional support was not there, and I just sold it. I got tired of it.
You mentioned an interesting thing where you said you were getting hate mail, and one of the things I tell people, if they start blogs or if they tweet a lot, I say, listen, you might get some comments that you might not like, so you have to develop a thick skin fast. And even for business or being a blogger or anything like that, I mean, it's hurtful when people say bad things about you, but you got to learn how to take the criticism and move on.
Well, that's true, and I agree with that. However, I also feel that, I think that's something that we really tell people, like, that they have to put up with abuse. Because at one point in time, it's one thing to kind of say if it's a negative remark like, oh, your site sucks or something like that, that's one thing. If people are calling your house, calling your job, threatening your livelihood, where you feel you're not safe or threatening your welfare, that's not something that you have to just put up with or grow a thick skin about. And with the work that I was doing with the Black Weblog Awards, again, I was not getting paid for this. This was something that I was purely doing for the community. This was not something that I personally was really benefiting from. And so to get that sort of feedback from people when the only thing that I'm doing is kind of showcasing and promoting people, it's like, I really don't have to do this. I don't have to take this. I think every person has their breaking point. And after 7 years, I was tired of it. So, I agree with what you're saying about you kind of have to grow that thick skin, but in the same vein, that's not a substitute for having to tolerate abuse.
Right. Well, one good thing is that you took your idea about promoting people and you took that over to Revision Path, which is your podcast, where you interview African Americans who are web designers and creatives and tech. And I think it's very important because there's so much rich talent out there, but they're just not getting the type of exposure that they probably deserve.
Yeah, that's true. And I actually had the idea for doing Revision Path way back in 2006. It stemmed out of the Black Weblog Awards. And I thought about it for a while and kind of bided my time on it, and it wasn't really until February of 2013 that I had the resources and the time and the bandwidth, so to speak, to really put it into action. And so actually, when I started Revision Path, I started it with another black designer who unfortunately backed out of the project at the 11th hour, which sort of left me to kind of pull everything together. But, yeah, it really came out of that same vein of wanting to recognize and showcase black creatives that are doing things on the web. With the Black Weblog Awards, of course, it's blogging, podcasting, video casting, or video blogging. With Revision Path, it's black web designers, black graphic designers, web developers, animators, motion graphics, anything that has to do with creating things on the web, because that's really sort of where everything happens now. It's the nexus of, commerce and communication and social justice and so many different things. So I really want to showcase those people that are the makers and the creators out there in those particular fields.
And you find a lot of your guests on LinkedIn, which is pretty cool because, again, these tools are out there to help people find guests. If you have a podcast or anything like that, the tools are out there. I mean, you have to dig a little bit. But, yeah, it's great that you use LinkedIn to find your guests.
Yeah, I use LinkedIn because LinkedIn was sort of that was actually my tertiary method of finding people. The first method I had was to just go through my address book, which I think is what a lot of people that do these types of things do. They just ask who they know. And so initially I went through my address book and asked other, black designers and developers that I knew if they would be interested, and they all said no. So with that, my second option was to just sort of do some research on the web to try to find black designers. And mostly the things that I found centered around the question of where are the black web designers? Where are the black web developers? Like, where are the black web professionals? This is actually a piece that I wrote for Black Web 2.0 back in 2007, I believe. And so from there, that's when I decided, okay, well, I should just go to LinkedIn, because even though the people that I asked the first time said no, they're probably connected to people who might say yes. So that meant going to their LinkedIn profiles, looking through their connections, and sort of trying to connect the dots that way.
You're doing a wonderful thing, I believe. The amazing thing is that people called out racism or you're racist because you're focusing on African-American talent, which is insane to me. Because when I look at different magazines, I barely see African-American talent. And here's a case where you're saying, listen, I'm spotlighting this talent so they can get exposure, so maybe they get invited to these conferences to speak, or maybe they get invited to work for different corporations because there's so much talent out there. You're actually doing a service that most of these companies aren't doing to find candidates of color.
Yeah, and what sort of the conclusion that I've come to is that the people that, particularly the ones that, are, because I do get hate mail and things for Revision Path, but the people that write and say that, this is racist and things like that, these are the people that are holding back the web. So these are the trolls that are out there. These are the people that leave, the nasty comments on YouTube and news articles and things like that. So I don't really let that deter me, because I know that the work that I'm doing is important. I hear from people that tell me that it's important, and because it's something that is personally fulfilling to me, that kind of is what keeps me going. Now, Revision Path doesn't have the numbers like other design podcasts do, and granted, it can be a tough sell to the general design community when you're talking about black people. I'm just going to be honest there. It's a hard sell. But I feel that the people that we're talking to, their stories need to be told. For a lot of people, this is the first interview that they've ever done. This is the first sort of piece of press that they have. This is the first time anyone has talked to them about the work that they do as a professional, And I feel like for people that have been in this industry, 5, 10, and longer years than that, people should hear about that. People should know about that, especially when you're talking about designers and developers that are coming up now in the ranks. They need to see people that look like them in the workplace. Now, with a lot of things that are happening right now has to deal with sort of, fixing the pipeline problem, which is focusing on kids, which, is great. Everyone loves kids. Not a problem there. Everyone loves kids. Everyone wants to focus on kids and making sure that, they're coming up with the programming knowledge and design knowledge and things like that. And that's great. However, people are doing that to absolve themselves from the current structural biases that are occurring in the industry right now, because it's a disservice to those kids if you are putting them in these pipeline programs to prepare them for an industry where they are not included. That is a disservice to them. So I guess in a way, Revision Path kind of, tackles the issue from the current end to say these are the people that are in the industry right now that are doing the work. They're sort of paving the way for the people to come up now. So that's why I think it's really important, because, for a lot of people, this is what they do. This is their livelihood, and everyone wants to feel validated in some kind of way. And I think that the podcast and the website in general is a really good way to make that happen. For a lot of companies, diversity is not something that they are really going to actively work on unless it affects their bottom line. Like that's just the black ass truth right there. It's unless it affects their bottom line, it's not really something that they are that interested in. Sure, people can always, complain about the company. I mean, we see Google, Twitter, LinkedIn are giving their employment numbers where their U.S. workforce is 2% black or things like that. And what do? They pledge, we'll do better. We'll get better. It's like the nice little canned awe that the audience says in like a sitcom or something when something, sentimental happens, which is great. Those are nice, fluffy words to tell everyone, but it does nothing to fix the problem. Like, how exactly are you doing? What steps do you have in play to make that happen? Is it a recruitment issue? If it is a pipeline issue, what are you doing in terms of bringing in and fostering and nurturing talent so you can increase, these diversity numbers? What are the actions that you're doing? Because the words at this point are cheap. They mean nothing. Like, it means nothing to me when a company that has a 2% U.S. workforce, black U.S. workforce, is saying that they're going to try to do better. That doesn't mean anything to me. Because, if you wanted to do better, you could. You could. It's not something hard to do. But because it doesn't affect their bottom line in any sort of way, whether they have 2% black people or no black people, it doesn't matter to them. It just looks good. It's the optics of the situation. So unless it comes down to the point where, say, let's use Twitter as an example. If people of color stop using Twitter en masse and just use another platform to the point where their stock prices dropped, then they would look at trying to increase diversity. In any other instance, it's not really something they're that concerned about. They'll pay lip service to the idea, but there has to be actual plans in play to make it happen.
Right. One of the best pictures I've ever seen was in Fast Company, and they were talking to Jason Njoku from Iraqo TV in Africa. And I saw a picture of him and his staff. It was all black Africans. It made me happy because, wow, everybody's a person of color and it involved with tech. And it made me sad at the same time because it's like this can happen here. But like you said, the powers that be don't want to do it. But it's like it's there. There's proof to say that Africans or people of African consent can do this if given the opportunity.
Right. I mean, and that's not to say that it's not happening here. The thing is, people don't know about it because when you look at sort of the current media that's put forth through blogs and podcasts and websites and things like that, they're not talking about these people. I'm pretty sure, I know that I've talked to all black creative firms before. Maybe not huge, maybe about 4 or 5 people, but still, someone has to tell their story because who else is talking to them?
Let's say you have people out there who want to be web designers, but they don't know where to start. Maybe they weren't engineers, maybe they weren't really good at math, but they have a vision for a website and a vision for design. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would say if they really have an interest in it, that they should try to find a mentor as soon as possible. Try to find someone that can help guide them or introduce them to people that can help guide them to where they want to be in their design journey. For example, they may start as a designer, find out they don't really have a knack for design, but they really like to code. Or it could be the opposite. But instead of taking years and years trying to figure out, yourself why you're not a designer, why it doesn't click for you, getting with a mentor that can help you out to sort of see where you're trying to go will take years off tremendously from trying to sort of figure out what the right thing is that you need to do. So I'd say that is the very first thing. And right now, there's probably more mentors out there than there used to be. I mean, if I can give a shameless plug, of course, look at Revision Path and any of the people that we've interviewed, and just contact them. I make sure that everyone that I talk to gives their contact information where people can find them online, so other people can talk them up and get ideas about, where they are in their design or development journey and decide where they want to go from there. I think that you just have to ask. Like, you just have to ask. If you're sitting and waiting for it to come to you, it's probably not going to happen. You have to be proactive and get out there and talk to people and network and make it happen. And if you're just starting out, I guarantee that's going to help you much more than just sort of getting a book from the bookstore or the library, cracking it open and trying to figure it out yourself. Like, find a mentor that can help you, that can point you in the right direction for resources and things like that, because they've been where you're trying to go. And I guarantee you they'll be willing to help you out.
Yeah. You kind of answered my backup question, was what if you're already a web designer or a creative, but you're not really good at networking, you're not really good at talking to people. You like sitting at your laptop or at your desk and writing or creating, but you're not really good at interacting with people. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would say there's always social media. There's always Twitter. I know on Facebook there are a few Black designer groups and things of that nature, but there's usually some affinity group out there for what you're looking for. So it's easy to find. I would say now it's probably easier to find Black designers or other designers or peers like yourself now than it was, even 5 years ago. It's much easier. There's conferences like Creative Control Fest. There's podcasts like mine. There's Facebook groups like Black Designers United. So the people are out there. It's just a matter of really sort of doing that research and finding them. Like, for example, I'm sort of one of those people that hate networking. I hate, like, working the room, schmoozing, shaking hands like that. I hate that.
Right.
I'm much more, I get the most out of people just from talking to them, just having a conversation with them. So for me, when I do the podcast, that really helps because I can draw out, people's stories from just talking with them and getting to know about their work as opposed to, going to like some random mixer and shaking hands with people, that kind of thing. So try to find what works within your particular communication style. Start a podcast. Hey, there can be more podcasts out there. Like right now, I feel like I'm probably the only one that does talk to Black designers and developers, but like start a podcast, start a website, anything that you can do that puts you in the mode of communication that is most comfortable to you. If it's writing, start a blog. If it's talking, start a podcast. If you like being on video, do a video series or something like that. The tools are out there. The people are out there. You just have to really go forward and make it happen.
What have you learned about yourself as you started Revision Path?
What have I learned about myself? I've learned that it's still hard out there for Black creatives. Just through the research and the people that I've talked to, a lot of the same problems that I'm sort of having right now, other people have had, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So in terms of Black people in the creative industry, we still have a ways to go. We have a, pretty long ways to go. So I've learned that these struggles are not new, and that the people that sort of give the same solutions about, well, we just need to wait and see and things like that, what you really have to do is just take action. Like, I've learned that you have to take action on these things. You can't just sit back and wait for it to get better. You have to take action.
And what are some of your favorite apps and gadgets that you use on a daily basis?
Let's see. Well, Skype, of course, for interviews. I use that. That's a good question. I have a Twitter app of some sort. I said Skype. I use FreshBooks for invoicing. I use TimeTrade to schedule interviews with people. Of course, I use WordPress a lot because that's what the website and everything is built on. Tumblr, often for inspiration of some sort. Facebook for community. I find that, a lot of people sort of rag on Facebook, but Facebook, you just kind of have to carve out your own niche of what you want Facebook to be. Other than that, I'm not really like a huge app user. Like if I think about what's on my phone, I don't have a ton of apps that I use on a regular basis besides 7 Little Words, which is a word kind of matching game. I use that, and a Twitter client, a Google Play music client. I'm not really a huge app person. Like my phone is mostly for utility. I don't really use it for anything outside of, which is probably a bit, weird because people have so many other things they use their phone for. I usually use my phone for making phone calls, which is
you might be.
I mainly use it for phone calls, or like if I'm out and about, like doing my daily errands or meetings, I use it for my calendar or listening to music. But other than that, I'm not like on my phone all the time. So, but if I'm talking about like my iPad, I use either the Kindle or the Pocket apps for reading. There's an app called Read Time that will pull from your Pocket queue. You set like a specific amount of time you want to read, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 60 minutes, and it'll pull articles from your Pocket queue, which I have about 5,000 articles. It'll pull articles from there, and there'll be just enough articles for you to read within the amount of time that you set. So I usually do that like if I'm on the train or if I'm about to go to bed, I'll say, okay, 30 minutes, and then I can read through anything that I've got in there, any articles or things like that. So I use those pretty often. Okay. I do a lot of reading, so yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Skype because I was listening to your podcast, like, wow, that's really clear. So you use Skype. What's your setup like when you're recording and we talk about microphone and all that stuff that you use?
So I have. It's funny. I'm always experimenting with trying to find what the right setup is because, there are guides out there that sort of explain like, oh, well, these are the mics and things you can get, but a lot of that stuff is very expensive. I don't have $200 to drop on a mic or $300 to drop on a mixer. So I've got a couple of different mics. The first is a Blue Yeti. That's sort of what I use, quote unquote, in studio, which is when I'm at my desktop. I just use that and I record using Pamela. It's a Windows program that does Skype recordings. So those are really the only two things I use, and I touch up audio in Audacity, which is just a free audio software version. We also have an audio engineer, but if there's stuff I need to do, I can always go in and edit the audio myself. And that's pretty much it. I just bought a travel recorder because I'll be at, Weapons of Mass Creation Fest in August, and I plan on doing some traveling in September, so I bought a little pocket recorder to do like on the road type interviews. I still need to learn how to use it because it's a bit more complicated than I thought it was with all the buttons and stuff.
What kind is it?
It's I'm looking at it now. It's a Tascam DR05.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's a very nice, very professional recorder, but it's not. You can't just pick it up and press record. There's like levels to it, so I got to figure it out before I go to Ohio. And then I have a headset mic. It's a Microsoft LifeChat LX6000. It's just a headset mic. So I use that on my laptop if, for instance, I'm like at a client location I need to record a call or something like that. So I've got those 3 mics, but I'm still trying to find what is the best mic and the best setup and things like that so I can deliver the best possible audio. So I'm always sort of experimenting with what's going to work the best.
Well, the Blue Yeti's pretty decent. That's a pretty good microphone.
Yeah, the Blue Yeti is good, and I have that. That's probably what I record mostly on. But there are times when I can't take that with me everywhere,
Right.
But it is a good mic, though. It's a really good mic. That's what I use probably 90% of the time.
Right. Okay. Speaking of Weapons of Mass Creation, how did they find you? Because I found you because I was looking at the speakers because I'm always interested to see how much diversity your conference may have. Mm-hmm. And I saw you. I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. So how did they find you for Weapons of Mass Creation?
So weapons of mass creation, that's an interesting story because it actually didn't start with me. It started with Jacinda Walker and I think a couple of other people, but they're located in like the Columbus, Cleveland area, and they've been approaching Go Media since last year about diversity, about sort of diversifying the speaker panels and things like that, and pulling from local talent as opposed to sort of kind of bringing in people from other locations. So when it came around to this year, I had actually sponsored an episode of the Go Media podcast a few months back. I think it was actually last year that I did that. And then they sort of followed up by doing a big promotion for their book, Drawn to Business, through Revision Path. So we sort of developed that relationship, before Weapons came along this year. But when they were, time to do the planning and things like that, I know that Jacinda was talking with Jeff Finley, who was one of the co-founders of Go Media, and they were really wanting to put together 2 panels, one around race and culture, one around gender and sexuality, in the creative community. And so they were asking about suggestions for people, and I gave some suggestions for folks that I had interviewed that I thought would be really good, that are sort of close by to Cleveland or are in the area. And then they sort of, dropped like, oh, would you be interested in speaking? I'm like, me? Okay, yeah, I'll do it. It didn't even cross my mind to suggest myself, because I knew that there were people that probably were closer that could do it, and I had to think about, do I have any projects that are going on during that time, and all that sort of thing. But that's sort of how it ended up materializing between Jacinda and Jeff, and I guess the suggestions that I gave, they rounded out the panel for people that are going to be on there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Maurice Cherry, thank you for the conversation. If people want to check you out, where can they go?
Well, of course, you can go to Revision Path, which is just revisionpath.com, and then we're also Revision Path on Facebook and Twitter. Personally, my site is just mauricecherry.com, and you can find links to me everywhere on that little simple one-page site. So I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and Tumblr and all that, so it should be easy to find.
And I did read that eventually you would like to do a conference revolving around Revision Path. I mean, are you any close with that, or that's still down the road?
That's down the road. I really, at this stage in the game, the community support is not there to put together a conference. At least not. I don't feel that way. Others might think differently, but I don't feel that the community right now around the site and the podcast is strong enough to do an event. But it is something that I would like to do in the future.
Okay, well, I hope it happens sooner than later. All right, thanks a lot, Maurice.
All right, thank you.
I want to thank Maurice Cherry for being a great guest on The Digital Life. Make sure you check out his podcast at revisionpath.com. That's revisionpath.com. And if you're in the Cleveland area from August 15th through the 17th, make sure you attend the Weapons of Mass Creation Conference, where Maurice will be a panelist. Make sure you go to wmcfest.com. That's wmcfest.com for more information. Before I go, I have a Twitter question for you. Tweet me at Kevin Lockett and give me a name of a person of color in technology that people should know. Use the hashtag #YouShouldKnow. That's the hashtag #YouShouldKnow. And give me the name of a person of color in technology that we all should know. All right, everybody. It's The Digital Life. I'm Kevin Lockett, and I'm out.
The Digital Life with Kevin Lockett.